Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be with you all today. Hope you've had a fantastic week. And today we're going to be talking about unstoppable AI applications, specifically drilling into using programmable incentives to coordinate distributed systems and diffuse groups of actors on a network to coordinate a certain outcome. And what do I mean by unstoppable applications? I mean that within the context of distributed systems, especially when we look at things like decentralized systems, when we release these things to the wild and couple technology with the right financial or economic incentives, we can control or guide the best outcome for our system. So let's try and go forward. I have a statement here, which is for decentralized AI to win, we need open, structured archive of the world's data. And what I mean by that is a combination of the Internet Archive with Scale AI's infrastructure. So the majority of models that are developed today source and acquire their data from Scale, whether that's OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta. It comes from this huge monolithic organization that will go out and source the data, label it, annotate it, structure it, and then sell it back to these organizations. And what I posture here is that we need to have this huge decentralized layer where anyone can get access to the world's data. We heard on the previous talk just a moment ago that we have access to a certain size data set today for training models. But from our perspective at Masa, we're focused on giving developers and giving AI agents or AI models a continuous stream of free, open data that's structured in a way where anyone can build with it. It's very, very expensive today to go to Scale, get your data set, and start building. And to give you kind of a bit of background on what it is we're building today, we're very focused on the Web3 ecosystem. We have a network of miners. We actually have a BitTensor subnet. We're on subnet 42. If those of you in here that are familiar with BitTensor, it's definitely going to be the biggest AI layer one. There isn't any other project or protocol that comes anywhere near the scale and the sophistication of BitTensor. And we then have our own distributed, decentralized network of data aggregators and scrapers. So on the left, you'll see we have scrapers that are architected to scrape Twitter. When Elon Musk closed down the Twitter API about 12 months ago, he did that to really build differentiation and close the walls around his own Grok model. So as he had an edge, was able to compete against Meta and other platforms who were similarly scraping all the data from Twitter. So we reverse engineer APIs, provide a toolkit to miners, and we have about anywhere between 20 to 40,000 miners running scrapers on the network at one time, providing real-time and index data in any one of these categories, whether it be Twitter, Discord, website, things like speech-to-text for podcasts, Telegram data. Honestly, if you can think or imagine a data source that's on the web, we will supply it and unlock it for you. We have a set of validators that secure the network, ensure that miners comply and don't fraudulently deliver data. For example, create a dictionary of tweets and just feed those back to requests. We have a very sophisticated system for ensuring that data is valid. And then we have well over 100 developers plus a couple of Fortune 500 enterprises who are using this data in their infrastructure. Anything from, I would say, the lowest hanging fruit being RAG. You know, during the course of today, while you're sat in here, there's thousands of documents that are kind of being put online. No model today has access to those documents. So this is the eyes and the ears of AI agents, AI models. You can easily access data, wrap it into either a simple prompt for a system prompt, sorry. You can put it into a vector database for retrieval, augmented generation, or you can take it a step further when you label and annotate it to do distillation, fine-tuning, and very similar to what the gentleman before was talking about, like doing very domain-specific agents. And then we have a layer of LLM workers that structure, annotate, and in certain instances, diarize speech-to-text data. And what I'm going to focus on today is talking about mathematics around creating incentive models. For those of you that may not be familiar with BitTensor, it has a certain structure and ecosystem that is able to drive a self-improving, self-optimizing ecosystem with incentives that constantly favor the best outcome, whatever that outcome is defined as. And in the case of Masa, our goals for our incentive mechanism is to reward high quality and verifiable data sets. We want to drive a self-improving ecosystem of miners. And we want to reward innovation and performance. So what do I mean by this? There is a transparent and mathematically formulated incentive mechanism that creates what you see on the right here, which is an incentive curve. On our network and on the subnet, you're limited to about 256 miners that can participate in this incentive mechanism. Every tempo, which is a period of time on BitTensor, miners are scored. Those that do not score highly enough go into almost like a relegation zone. They're no longer immune, and they will get booted off the network. So you have to pay a registration fee to join. And if you don't perform and get yourself to the end of this cumulative distribution function curve on the right here, you will be under the line, this minimum non-immune incentive line, and you'll lose your right to earn incentives. So this curve and this mathematical model here really favors miners who drive consistency, quality, and we find that through this model and mechanism here, we are always improving the way that data is scraped, the quality of the data, the diversity of the data. You end up having miners become creative and actually self-sovereign in the way that they provide data to the actual ecosystem. And we get some really nice outcomes here. We get consistency, we get quality, fairness. You'll see on my t-shirt, we promote and push this notion of fair AI, where anyone can contribute to this ecosystem. We smooth outlier control. If there's a miner that decides to feed an overwhelming number of tweets into the system or scrape website data, those outliers are smooth, and it's actually adversarial to do that. It's not in your interest to do that. And it dynamically adjusts and adapts based on the conditions on the network, whether it's demand, types of data, and quality, maintaining an efficient use of incentives. So I'm going to touch on something I think is pretty important here, especially when you're building a decentralized data system like we are, or data network. You really need to make sure that your data is valid. If you just left everybody in this room to contribute data to a pool, and you were going to give arbitrary rewards to anyone that contributed to this pool, there's nothing stopping a bad actor from filling that pool with data that's not relevant, that isn't of high value, or isn't even based on the request that you're putting out into the ecosystem. So we use machine learning models and, again, mathematics to do some simple stuff here. One of the techniques we use is cosine similarity checks. It essentially aligns and checks the closeness of vectors between text-based outputs. So if I'm searching for Bitcoin and the response there's not Bitcoin, you'll get a very low cosine similarity score. And that means that response is not contextually accurate for the request that I put out. If I say, give me 1,000 tweets on Bitcoin, and you give me 1,000 tweets on the US election, you will get scored extremely low, and you won't get any rewards. So this helps to kind of keep this contextually relevant response in a stochastic system. We then do consensus validation, where we actually request data in a slightly redundant way right now, which is not super efficient, where we have multiple miners respond to requests, which also goes to reduce the risk of fraudulent contributions. And we also include staking and slashing mechanisms. We do a hybrid of tau incentives on our subnet along with our own incentive mechanism on our protocol as well, which underpins the scraping of data. And if any of you know like Bright Data or Apify, there's many of these platforms out there where you can go out and get data like this. We've decentralized and distributed that so anyone can do it. And there's no way of shutting it off, hence it being unstoppable. And I'm just going to kind of give like a very high-level use case of where we see the most traction for us right now. Like I said, we have a Fortune 500 company that is using a lot of what is very hard to get data from our network to power RAG applications. And the amount of, I would say, detail and contextual relevance that you can put into a model through RAG is really amazing, especially when you kind of have individual agents on a chain of agents, sort of thought chain, or with GPT-o1, we've tested this kind of process with o1, where you're able to very, very much create a specific knowledge base or domain expert in your RAG chain. And this outline, just from like a fundamentals principle, just says, you know, as a developer prompts an LLM, you have an embedding which creates a vector between the prompt and something in your vector database, and it then just either goes out to our network and fetches it in real time or pulls it from an indexed set of data that right now is growing exponentially on our network. We'll make it available through Hugging Face, and we'll soon have it available through a general API that anyone can access. And this is all free right now. If you were to access the Twitter data that goes through our system on a daily basis, it would cost you over $250,000 a day based on a $5K per month subscription using the official Twitter API. So how can you participate in Masa if you're a developer in here? We'd love you to come on and join us to build agents. Not just agents, but also machine learning models. Within this data, there's a ton of information that can allow you to do like regression analysis, predictive models. We have hedge funds that are looking to use data, and they're experimenting this data to see if there's signal for quantitative trading strategies. So this has use case far beyond the domain of AI into traditional ML. It's easy to get caught up in what AI is, but there's an entire domain of machine learning that can be done on this data. And anyone can access this index data along with some pre-processed data sets that we do. And then if anyone's interested in being a miner, I'll warn you, it's quite competitive on the subnet. I just got 5 messages this morning from people that got deregistered because they weren't performing highly well, because it's competitive. And you can do data scraping. We're going to be introducing pre-processing for vectorization, diarization, and you would earn tau and Masa emissions for doing this. Right now, as a Twitter miner, you can earn about $60 a day, so that's actually quite good. It will cost you about $50 a month to run a DigitalOcean droplet to do that, plus a pro account, which is about $7 a month. So very, very high ROI. And if you want to connect with me, you can do on Telegram, and happy to take any questions if there's anything here that's of any interest to anyone. Thank you. No questions. Okay, great. Yeah.
So, I love what you're doing, but I do have a maybe unpleasant question, right? Because you're scraping all the data. This is basically all illegal data. How will you tackle the problem of legality of your data that you're scraping? I mean, if I'm training the model with illegal data, the model is basically also in a legal trouble, right?
Yeah, so I think the question that is being asked, if we're scraping data from whatever source, what is like the legality behind that? And what are the, would you say ethical considerations or legal considerations? Is that what you're asking?
Basically, you have a legal problem and you have an ethical consideration. You have both problems. And you have the problems that your users will be using something that's also more or less illegal, right?
Yes, yes. I understand the point. So how do I think about this? I believe that there are certain walled gardens of data that should be open and available to everyone. I think also there is a need and requirement for open and fair access to any single individual in any market to be able to build in this space on a fair and level playing field. Do I think that us reverse engineering Twitter's APIs, which we do, and we continuously do it every single week, we update software and release it because it's a game of cat and mouse. The nearest reference I can go to is Plaid. Plaid in the US, along with Tink in EU, was doing this probably for 6 or 7 years. They were reverse engineering APIs for banks to unlock data in the open banking use case. Over time, banks cooperated with these organizations. So I don't know if I've got a good answer for you, because I'm quite anarchistic on this point, and I think this data should be available to everyone, and I do not think it should be in walled gardens. I think it should be freely available. And if we don't do it, someone else is going to do it, and when they do it, they're going to exploit this by charging. Right now, we give it away for free. This is exactly why we give it away for free. We're not making money on the data, and that's a very intentional legal decision based on counsel. I like the question.
In case there's either.
But do you filter any personal or sensitive data out of the data that you scrape?
We only scrape data that's in the public domain. So for example, let's think of a good example where I think that there is a walled garden which would be unacceptable to scrape and make public. No, every single type of data that we scrape is in the public domain, either under a common license, an open source license, or, for example, in the case of Twitter, do we class Twitter data as public data or Twitter's data? I class it as Twitter's data. So we're unlocking data that they're trying to keep closed. That actually isn't any of our data. That's Twitter's data. Yeah, so we focus very much on what's on the public web. And I think the ethical consideration here is it's more aligned with when OpenAI was using a lot of YouTube videos to train Sora. Is that acceptable? Is it acceptable there's this entire monolithic centralized company organization using all of the contributions of work on YouTube to monetize their model? I don't think that is ethical. So what do you think? So having seen what we're doing and having heard what I've said, what are your thoughts? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I would ask myself, is this ethical?
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.